Howdy everybody, and welcome to VTS22 December 2006. I'm Keith, your host, who you can't see. That's right, this month we're going to go ahead and skip the live video of me for a couple of reasons. One, this video is a little extra long, so as a result I need to save some download space, and the live video from a video camera doesn't compress as well as stuff captured from the screen. So I want to keep the good stuff for you and skip a lot of me talking at the camera. As promised, this month I'm going to be covering walks. A lot of folks are like, oh geez, walks. And so I'm going to try and get through the basics here. We're not going to cover every aspect of walks. We're going to just get down, hey, how do I just block out a decent walk? How do I think about walks? How do I come at them? What's the basic construction pieces of it? And then how do I go about building them? I've seen a lot of younger animators struggle with this. I get probably 3 or 4 emails a month from subscribers and from other people saying, oh, I'm having problems with a walk. Can you teach me how to walk? Can you do a walk in VTS? And so after 2 years, I think it's about time I do a walk. So without further ado, let's hop right at it. Okay, first thing, we have our dude here, okay? It's a fun little rig. I found this free online. It's a nice rig. I forget who made it. Let's see, who made it? Tim Oberlander at timoberlander.com. Thanks, Tim. I don't know if you're watching or listening, but I like this little rig. He's kind of fun. Simple to use, pretty well constructed, very logical, well thought out. So, how do you do a walk? Some people have suggested that you take the hip and you bob it along to the rhythm you want, and then you make the feet match. I was never able to give it that figured out without like pulling out my hair. I literally had hair in my hands when I tried doing that. So after studying, traditional animation for a while, I realized, wait a second, like everything else, you guys had broken it down into drawings. You can look at Richard Williams' Animator Survival Kit, and he's got about 127 pages of walks in there. And that's not much of an exaggeration. And he's got lots of different drawings. The thing about the Richard Williams book is it points up to one thing that I think is universally true. There is no such thing as the perfect walk. Doesn't exist. There are different walks for different people. There are as many different walks as there are human beings. So the perfect walk is all character specific. So I'm not going to teach you how to make the quote-unquote perfect walk. Doesn't exist. What I'm going to teach is how to make the basic walk, which you can then change and adapt and edit to become any walk. Alright, first part. I say that there are 3 cores to animating any walk. The heel plant, the passing, and the heel plant. And the passing and the heel plant. That's it. Okay? Let's look at that. Now I'm doing this guy in space, and later on I'll come back and I'll show you how to do one where he's in place and we can move the slide the root. But I a lot of times prefer just animating my characters in space, especially if they have to turn or something. The other thing is, once you figure out how to build these, it's not tedious to build more of them. In fact, it's pretty much just go ahead and straight through and make good headway and go at it. It's not rocket science once you break it down. So the heel plant is the first contact point of the heel right here. Okay? Then the passing is where all the weight is on one foot and the other foot is just about passing by its halfway point on its travel forward. And then the heel contact of that foot. Okay? The heel contact of that foot, the other foot is on the ground coming up. That's it. You can put those 3 things in there, and if you get those 3 in, you can block out any walk anywhere. You need a character to walk from the door to the table? Fine. Just go ahead and block out as many steps as you need. Do it this way from that point to that point. That's how long it takes. Well, what if a director says he has to do it in 20 frames? Okay, so block out the walk, and then the last 20 frames of it is what you film. As a person who has been a director, I often told my animators, guys, I'm not really interested in filming walks. Walking is very rarely storytelling. Sometimes it can be used as a clever way of filling time, but most of the time you want to get right to it. So if you have to get from point A to point B, let's say he has to get from here to here, okay? Well, that's 2 stride lengths, and that 2 stride lengths is going to take a little bit more than 2 seconds, or more than a second to do it, okay? It's just going to be how it goes. Like, that's just a quick little linear, in-between, ride through it sort of thing. And you can block this out and say to your animation supervisor, hey, animation supervisor person, do you think this will work? You don't have to worry about arms, you don't have to worry about the hips. I mean, the hips are barely going up and down. If we look at the graph editor here, they go up and down a little bit. They go forward and back. Not much, you know, they just go forward basically on the travel of the thing. It's just a quick little block it in there. You're not going to get it nailed the first time. You're just going to get the basics, okay? The cool thing about this 3 drawing approach is that you can get any number of combinations of walks and block them out with this 3 drawings. You have a guy who's going to walk a little slower? Fine. You really only have 2 things to mess around with here, okay? 3 if you add the hip up and down. The first one is the stride speed, okay? Stride speed. So let's take all of these keys. Let's say we just drag it on out to 32 and then, you know, snap them so that they're on. Well, I probably should have done that to all of the objects so that I wouldn't have that weird result that you just saw. So let's go ahead and wait a second. Let's do that again. All right, there we go. Sorry, don't mean to film me being a complete fool. All right, so take that out. Let's say to 34 or 35. Okay, so now our walk, instead of being on 12 frames, is on 17. You're like, 17? Whoever walks on 17? Well, if you're tired or slow or sad, maybe you would. Or if you're cautious or whatever, you can get a different speed there. And you use the emotional cue to kind of give you a sense of which way you want to go with it. And you might be saying, well gosh, Keith, those are really long strides for such a slow walk. It feels kind of odd. Which brings us to the second thing you can edit, block out anything you like. And that would be stride length. So let's go ahead and take all of these objects. You can go inside here and look at your translate Z's. Translate Z and translate Z. You take all of these, and if you want, you can go ahead and scale them. Select them first and scale them all down so that everything's a little bit shorter. Okay? So now that's a little bit different. All right? It's a different personality. It's a different kind of feel to it. All right? Let's say he's really, really tired. Well, okay, that works well. Well, but now his knees are bent too much. Okay, fine. So pull up his root a little bit. And so now we're kind of blocking in just the basics very, very quick of a guy who might be just a little bit on the sad or the tired side. Okay? And if you really want to sell this to your director, you just go ahead and have them all mopey. I'm all mopey. I don't feel good today. I'm sad. Pretty simple. All right? Now, we don't have a lot of things going on there, but we've got enough where you can sell this idea with 3 drawings. It's that simple. You just, the heel plant, the passing, the heel plant. You can get all different kinds of personalities by changing basic posture, really. The stride length and the stride speed. You can get lots of different variations with just those adjustments. And you can try out lots of different ideas with just those 3. You can mark out, you can work your way through space very quickly. You'll say you need to have a character walk around a bunch of obstacles. Well, you can have them do that. You just work your way through it, 3 drawings at a time. Heel plant, passing, heel plant, passing, heel plant, passing, etc., etc. Do the turns, pretty much make the turns happen somewhere on the passing. It's usually a pretty decent idea. It's a good place to do it, in case you have to. I won't animate a turn, but you see, it could end up looking pretty decent if you do it that way. So anyhow, there you go. There's your 3 basic building blocks. But let me undo that a little bit so I can take a look and explain some other pieces in mechanics. One thing you want is on the heel plant, you want the toe to kind of have a little bit of a drag to it. Build that right into it. Okay. And on the passing, you want the foot to be rotated down and the toe to have a little bit of a drag to it. Okay. It's generally how you want that to work. All right. The hips, well, we'll look at the hip stuff a little bit later, but the general idea is that the hips are at their highest at a certain point and at the lowest at another point. So let's take a look at when that happens and start filling out a walk a little bit some more, because I need to explain to you that we have these three to really get your first pass really rough blocking of a walk in, any walk. But all walks really consist of 5 major drawings. If you get those 5 major drawings, you could literally leave them in step mode and you have limited Flintstones animation and it'll work. If you get 5 drawings, 5 poses of a walk, and you get them working, you can do anything. And that's where we're going to go next. 5 pieces to a walk, any walk. You get these in, you're good as gold. Okay? They're built off of the first 3. Remember the first 3? Heel plant, passing, heel plant. Okay, we got that? Heel plant, passing, heel plant. All you have to do is add 2 more. From the heel plant, on a normal 12 frame walk, about 2 frames later, you want what I call full weight down. The full weight down is where the toe has come down. This toe is just about ready to leave the ground. The hips are at their lowest point and the furthest forward that they'll be. And pretty much this is where the weight finally comes down. So the heel contact is there. You add weight down. Boom. Alright, simple. Then the weight comes up for the passing. And then the second one to add, make our 5 out of the original 3. The original 3 were, again, heel contact, passing, heel contact, and we added weight down, passing, what I call full weight up. This is, gosh, the best way to describe this is where he would fall down if he didn't have a leg in front of him to land on. A walk has been described as a controlled fall on a repetitive basis. And then you stop and think about it, that really is how it happens. If we didn't, that's why we trip. If our foot catches on something, we fall down. That's because we are literally projecting ourselves forward off balance and catching ourselves with our feet. So the weight full up could also be called the tipping point. Okay, you need this drawing to kind of show the full extension back here, the hips fully forward and fully up. This foot's getting ready to come down for the heel contact. Okay, if you get these 5 drawings in, okay, again working from this golden triangle of foot, and hip, it's for me, I can't think of a walk only thinking of just the feet without the hips, and I can't think of a walk thinking of just the hips without also thinking of the feet. To me, these 3 things together create the triangle, the basis of the walk. I'm not even bothering with the upper body. I'm not even bothering with the hip rotation. I'm not bothering with a lot of that stuff yet. I'll get to it, and you'll see how I lay it in afterwards. But for me, the basics are these 3 pieces working together. And if you can get these 5 drawings working on just these 3 controllers, you can get a walk. Stepping through it, you get a sense, right? And if I took all of these controllers and took all the tangents and set them over to stepped and just hold down my little cycle through it, there you have Flintstones animation walk. You have these 5 drawings, you have a walk. You don't even have to in between it. I mean, on limited animation you don't. You get the idea right there, the whole thing, the amount of weight going up, the weight coming down, you know, you get the characteristics of it. You really want to accentuate weight? Well, you just take this, you can go ahead and hold this key 1 frame longer, alright? So I moved it over from 8 to 9. So now the weight up is a little bit held up there a little bit longer, and therefore it comes crashing down a little bit faster. So just by changing the timing of the weight up, I can get a little bit, something with a little bit more weight to it. Bonk, bonk. And you can just shuffle the timing around and experiment with these different timings. The way I laid it out is that normally on a basic walk, not a perfect one, but on a basic walk, the full weight down will come 2 frames after the heel contact, and the full weight up will come 2 frames after the passing position. Right? The tipping point pose comes 2 frames after the passing position. You can change these timings. If you really want something stompy, I can take and move this, you know, so that it holds it up there and then comes down really fast. You know, boom. It's all about getting these things in there. And see, for me, these drawings or these positions, the stride length and the stride speed, the placement of the full weight down or the full weight up drawing, these are little pieces. They're like checkers on a checkerboard, and you can rearrange them to get different results. But they're the same piece. You don't need to really do too much to get something that feels a lot stronger. And I block out the personality of all my walks with these 5 drawings, all of them. If I want to sell something, you know, if I want to make him feel sad or something like that, I might go ahead and, you know, put some gesture into his upper body just to kind of quick, you know, block something out. But for the most part, it's 5 drawings off of these 3 pieces. And if I get that working, then I'm usually in pretty good shape. And you can get a lot of different personalities. Once you get these things working, all right, you use your 3 drawing block to work out the basic construction, because you don't want to build in these weight downs and weight ups unless you know your stride length and your stride speed is actually going to work for you. Once you figure that out, then you can go ahead and build in these 2 extra drawings for every step. And then you can start building out the core functionality of your walk. I animate walks this way, and it's probably one of the only things, walks and runs and things like that, these are pretty much the only things I animate in this more, I don't know, CG hasn't been around long enough to say it's old school, but your more typical CG fashion of layering things in, where you kind of, you know, put your you know, you get your basic thing working and then go ahead and layer in other things. Like, you know, a lot of times folks, when they talk layering, they just bounce the hips along and try and work the feet, and I can't, like I said, I can't think independently of them, and they have to work together. The hips moving don't mean anything outside the foot stride and the stride length, and the stride length means nothing without the hips, because you can't, if you move the hips too far off the ground, then the stride length ends up being artificially shortened, or if the hips are too low, then the stride length becomes artificially longer. It's just, I can't think that way. So get these 5 drawings working, and then you have some pretty good stuff to work with. Now you can put layering in some other things for the personality. You can start in-betweening some things if you want, but I wouldn't even do that. The first thing I would do, again, all of this is pretty much sans rotations in the hips. I mean, if we step back a bit, you'll see that the hips are not rotating at all. I'm not worrying about a lot of the details of the arm. I'm not worrying about the arms at all. I do the arms last. Because the arms are so much driven by what's happening in the core of the body. In the core of the body, all this stuff is driven a lot by the hips. But for me to get lost in rotating hips right now, when I haven't quite figured out the personality of my stride length and my stride speed, it's just, you end up mixing things in that it isn't time yet. So once I get it figured out to this point, now I'm ready and able to go ahead and start thinking about, well, how do I want the hips to rotate? How do I want to build this out a little bit more to give it some more personality, to kind of flesh it out and give me a jump-off point to really start finessing lots of different possibilities with it. And again, I'm going to say this again, no such thing as a perfect walk. just a walk that's perfect for a character and for the moment. Everybody walks different ways depending on how they feel. So, all right, basic mechanics: heel plant, weight down, passing, full weight up / tipping point, heel plant, repeat, and just keep repeating. And you can walk a character through space. You can do it on a placer. Once you break it down to those basic 3, then 5, it's not a mystery anymore. You can get anywhere you want to go. Okay, so now let's take a look at how to work in the rotation of the hips and start fleshing that out a bit more. So here we have laid out our 5-step walk, or 5 pose, not 5-step. Sorry about that. This is with a hip where this is a walk in place, where the feet are sliding back and he's not really moving through space. I'll explain a little bit later how to handle this, having him move through space. But here's your 5 drawings: heel contact, weight down, passing, weight up, heel contact. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The rest is just a repeat to get back to where we were. And it's just a cycle. And if I go through it, you'll see it just cycles through. Now this is very basic blocking of a step. There's a lot of cleanup left to be done. There's a lot of other things. I've got the arms turned off, as you see. And right now we're going to take a look at the rotational mechanics of the hips. Because if you take a look at this from the front and just watch the hips, as he goes through, you see he's just pretty much straight up and down. So we're going to try and plus this up a little bit. And there's a couple of things about the hips you want to try and remember. One of them is that you can't get too crazy over rotating them. If you do, it starts really looking really weird. Anybody who's tried to do that, if you don't keep it as simple as you can, it starts getting really, really goofy. So right now with the hips we have going pretty much up and down and forward and back. That's about it. There's not any side to side. We're going to try and handle the side to side a little bit later, but right now let's take a look at just the rotational aspects of it. If you take a look at the keyframes for the hips up and down, this is generally the pattern you want in your curves. I'll select the curves so maybe they show up a little bit easier. But it comes down and kind of goes up on the passing and over the top and then comes down, and up on the passing over the top and then comes down. That's generally the up and down that you want. Okay. Looking at rotations, there's a couple of rules about this. Remember I said that there's no such thing as the perfect walk, because nobody walks the same way. There's certain rules about a walk. There's certain mechanical rules that you want to keep in mind. So let's take a look at these mechanical rules. One of those is the side-to-side rotation of the hips. Okay, generally the hips are going to go up or down depending on where it is. And this is what gives girls their nice, sexy walk and stuff like that. Is they just have wider hips so that the swing is a little bit wider. But the idea here is to know when and where and how the hips do their swing from, on this axis side to side. Okay. The general rule is that on the passing position, the hip is highest on the foot that is holding the weight. So it would look like that. Okay. And let me get in here and just to make things simple, let's go ahead and get rid of all the keyframes on rotation right there, so that we're dealing with just real simple stuff. So let's set that at 0 now. Now we can go up here to the passing position and rotate that way. Okay? And that's about it. When you're thinking, wait, there's got to be more. No, not really. And the other passing position, it's that way. And then you just oscillate between the two of them. And then here we're at 0, so take that and we'll set it to 0. As we go through it, you're going to ease in and out of it, of course. But the general rule is that the higher side is the side that is holding the weight for the passing position. Now you may be saying, well, gosh, that looks kind of weird because his body's waving back and forth. Sure it is. And it would naturally wave back and forth because we haven't gotten to the shoulders yet. The shoulders, you'll notice, they'll counter-rotate to kind of keep things in balance. So let's go ahead and take our rotate keys and take a look at them. The rotate Z is just bouncing back and forth very simply. And let's go ahead and set the post-infinity cycle on this. And if I just go through it, Now it's fairly linear and not particularly imaginative, but remember we're just building out the basics, the blocking of this. You know, we're kind of building up. The walk is the one thing where I will pretty much take the basic building blocks and put in there and then start building on top of it. Because to me it's easier to apply these little mechanical rules just as pieces of information. And if you want, you can go ahead and just take, I mean, while we're here, just go ahead and just add the e's like that, and you're pretty much done. And all right, so that's the rotate z. All right, now let's take a look at the rotate y. The rotate y is going to be one of those things where basically the leading hip follows the feet. So let's go ahead and rotate it, 13, not 131, 13 degrees. Okay, and then again on this plant we'll just go ahead and do minus 13, and back here at the last step we'll just do 13 again. Okay, and again we'll go ahead and set the rotate y. It's just again oscillating between very simple things. Set the thing to cycle towards the end. If you want, you could flatten the tops of these too. I mean, polish it as you go if you like. And so there you go. It's as simple as that. You try to overdo it and you end up really chasing a lot of things. At least I always did. To me, the simplest thing is to just get it working and then just push things after that. So this is building our basic generic walk. It's a little over exaggerated, so I can show it to you as an example. Okay, so we've got that rotation dynamic. We've got the side to side. We've got the Z and the Y. Some folks ask, well, do you have a rotate X on the hips? Sometimes, depends on the walk. Really depends on the character. In a general generic walk, there really isn't much going on as far as rotation of the X. At the passing position, sorry, that's the weight up. The passing position, you might have, well, probably at the weight up. You might rotate back a little bit, and then at the weight down, you might rotate forward. The idea is to just keep it as simple as possible. Not too many keys, not too much going on. So the idea here is, again, just a simple up and down, forward and back sort of thing. Again, if you want, you take these peaks and valleys and you can flatten them off. Don't have to worry about that too much, because that will just roll right through, and that'll roll right through. And we can just kind of fix that so that we get a nice clean look there. Alright, so there's your hip rotation dynamics. They're general rules. Again, you can tweak these things ad infinitum to get all different kinds of walks. You can scale them, you can do all different kinds of things, but it's the basics there. And really the difference between one kind of walk and another is really just playing around with proportions of different values that you're going to put in here. This is a kind of a dopey happy walk, you know, he's really kind of over-rotated and, you know, big strides and stuff. But it's again to illustrate the point. Alright, now let's take a look at this. We've got the classic walk-in-place walk cycle. He's not traveling through world space at all. I mean, just check this out. See? He's not going anywhere. Nothing special. So how are we going to get him to move through space? Well, there's a couple of rules about the what I call the route slide or the placer slide, or world, or whatever you want to call it. There's usually a top node of the character that indicates where they can move around, okay? In order for him to move through space in a convincing fashion, the feet moving, as the feet move forward and back, one of the rules, and this really does have to be a rule, is that the forward to back motion has to be linear, okay? Completely, perfectly linear. If we take a look at the translate Z of this guy's foot, you see that it goes from here to here in a fairly straight line. I have an extra key in here, but I don't even need it, okay? You want that to be pretty much just straight up linear. There's a reason why. It's because what we're going to do, here I've offset the foot, you know, I copied the keys from this one and just basically offset 12 and pasted it in here and just cycled before and after. It's the same motion. Since both are zeroed out, copying from one to the other doesn't mess things up because they're both in their own local zero space, if that makes sense. Anyhow, the idea is that if the feet sliding back are linear, that allows us to move the placer forward in a linear fashion. Okay, so what you're going to get is as the feet slide backwards, this thing will slide forward, giving the impression at the same exact rate of speed. Okay, you could theoretically ease in and ease out these things, but the practicalities of trying to manage that are very difficult, and the payoff is so little that to me it has just become a rule of mine. If I'm going to do what I call a root slide walk, the feet and the slider are all going to be linear. Okay, so what I want to do is I need to figure out, well, how far do I have to move this thing and in how many frames? What you do is you mark the forward progress of the foot, and you take a look at the value. Right here I have 68 is the forward value. And then you see the very far back value, which is going to happen at the weight down. That's the last frame where this foot is moving backwards. And then the next frame it starts moving forward. So on the weight down position, I take a look at the value, and it's minus 46. So what do? What kind of math we got here? I'm an animator, not a mathematician. Well, it's pretty simple. What you want to do is you want to counter move the root the same distance that the foot slides back. Okay, so the amount that the foot slides back in world units, you need to slide the root forward by the same number of units, therefore creating an offset where they cancel each other out. All right, so we got 68 on the forward and 46 on the back. So simple little math. Bring up my calculator here. 68 plus 46. 68 units on the forward, 46 on the back, gives me 114 units. It travels that far in 14 frames. So I take this guy, and at frame 14, move him forward, 114 units. Take a look at my graph editor, and I got that value held off into infinity. And you Maya guys, right-click, curves, post-infinity, linear. Okay, that just holds it off into the distance. So what does that give us? That gives us the impression of him moving through space. If you look, the feet, other than a little pop right there, but that's because of the hip rotation, the feet are not sliding at all. Not sliding. No sliding on the feet. Lock down how you please. And the reason why that's simple and why it works is because it's linear against linear. The same distance and the same distance, the same number of frames. It can't help but look like it's perfect and locked down. So there you go. If you animate a walk cycle in space and you're wondering how do I move it through space, well, that's how you move it through space. You can animate turns if you want, but it's a lot trickier. If I have to have a character turning, I don't use a slider walk. I just move them through space like I blocked out in my 3-step and in my 5-pose blocking. I just move them through space. Generally, the way you want to handle a turn is you make the turn at this pose right here, in the passing pose, or somewhere around the passing or wait forward pose. You just rotate the character forward, or you turn them generally in the hips. It'll break up your cycle, but that's why I don't use cycles for stuff that has to turn. If I just got a character walking from point A to point B, placer cycle is just great. Okay? So there's how you handle the moving forward in space. No sliding whatsoever, and that will go on as long as you like. You can have them walk forever and ever and ever and ever. No problems. Okay? What I want to try and do now is take a look at building out from the root, again, the root being the hips. You try and get that, just to reiterate, the basic structure of every walk is, of course, the stride length and the stride speed, and, of course, the hip up and down. It creates that golden triangle of the foundation. From this, you can do anything. At this point, you can animate this character walking and acting. You can just create the top of the body just doing its own thing on top of this if you want. Okay, it still has to follow the physics, but if you wanted to, you can animate your character gesturing or doing whatever. But we're just going to build out a basic walk, and we want to look at the kind of the mechanics of the spine. Okay, remember I said that the spine or the shoulders. When I say shoulders, I really got to distribute it up the spine. The shoulders rotate opposite of the hips in every channel. Okay, so here we added the hips rotating, slightly counterclockwise in order to get that right hip forward. So taking one axis at a time, let's take the shoulders and we'll just rotate them back on the Y. I don't know, let's pick a nice arbitrary number that's easy to see, -14. Okay, I did it to this controller and this controller, therefore the end result is that this is much like a -28 because it's added on top of that right there. Okay, makes sense. It's a little bit of math. 14 on this one, 14 on that one. By spreading it up the spine, you get a nice blend, and it creates a connectivity to the body where you don't get this isolation. Because if you did, if I just did this 0 and then did this at -28, you get this. It doesn't blend quite as well. Some rigs are built a little bit differently. This one's not too bad. This is actually a pretty good little rig, which is why I'm using it. I kind of like the rig. The facial expressions are kind of limited because he has no mouth, but it's good for body stuff. But I just don't like the way that looks as much as doing something that's -14 there and -14 there. It spreads it up a little bit better, and I just like the way it looks a little bit better. I'm picky. Alright, so picking one axis at a time, so now the hips go this way and the shoulders go that way. Well, let's find the opposite of that. This is on the heel contact, so find the other heel contact frame, which is on a typical walk 12 frames later. And we'll just take these same things and we'll just reverse it. 14. So now that was 14 and that should be 14. Alright? So now we've got, of course it snaps back, and because it's set the cycle already, and then go out to 24 and mark the end of the cycle by just copying 1 to 24. So now what we get is a really nasty pop right there. Oh, it's because we forgot to take him out to 24. Always have everything selected if you want it to work right. Alright, and what you can do, if we take a look at this guy and this guy, take a look at the rotate Y's. There's some funky curve junk going on in there, but what you can do is you can then just flatten that out, give yourself some nice curve. And if we just go